Welcome to The Humble Philosopher. So I named this channel The Humble Philosopher because I just have philosophical ideas I'd like to share, but I'm not a formally trained philosopher. I'm not an academic, just somebody that has done a lot of his own thinking and reading over the years, and seeking to share some of my ideas. But when it comes to the subject of evolution, and the deficiencies of the theory of evolution in explaining the fact of life, biological complexity, I actually have a bit of a black belt. So, one of the problems with the debate of, design versus, intelligent design, we'll say on the one hand, versus the neo Darwinian mechanism on the other. Now, neo-Darwinian is a term that typically means just sort of the concretization of Darwinism over the years, sort of the academic consensus, specifically being that random mutation and natural selection are sufficient on their own to turn dust into Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone. So I come down on the other side of that. You could put me in the intelligent design camp. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. But the real difficulty of this debate over the years has been a lack of defined terms. So the argument for neo-Darwinism, the neo-Darwinian mechanism, is essentially a statistical argument. And one of the big problems I've had over the years with the Richard Dawkins and the Daniel Dennetts of the world is that nobody ever does the math. It is a straightforward statistical argument that there has been enough variation over the years. There's been enough random mutation over the years for natural selection to work on to turn dust into Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone. But nobody ever does the math. Nobody even attempts to do it. Nobody ever, puts constraints on that. So what I'm offering here today is a very simple mathematical rubric. And it's not my own. It comes from Daniel Dennett. And if you don't know who Daniel Dennett is, he's a professor of cognitive science at Tufts University, or at least he was at the time of the writing of this book, from which I get his own mathematical definition, which clearly disproves the neo-Darwinian mechanism straightforwardly. Collect my thoughts. So anyway, I'm just going to read from this book, dive right in, and I'm going to show how, in Daniel Dennett's own terms, there never could have been enough random mutation for natural selection to act on to bring dust into Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone. So the book that I'm working with here is Darwin's Dangerous Idea. And I'm going to read at length. I mean, it's just a short piece, but when you start making these videos, you realize how long just a few paragraphs are when you're reading it uninterrupted. But in this section here, Daniel Dennett gives a clear mathematical formula, very simple statistical formula for making his argument. And when I read this, my jaw actually dropped. I was like, I can't believe he just gave away the game like that. And I can't believe that he thinks his readers are so stupid that they don't understand the power of exponentiality. And so I'll read this, and then we will do some simple math, and we will see straightforwardly that there could never have been enough antecedent forms for natural selection to act upon in order to take the disorganization of dust and put it into the hyper-organization of Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone. So if you were to pick up this book, in my edition, it's on page 52. The subheading is processes as algorithms, and that's important because what he's arguing is that random mutation and natural selection is a straightforward algorithm, and that algorithms on their own are capable of bringing form into existence, even though Gödel's incompleteness theorem would, prohibit it from bringing about meaning, but that's another episode. So I'm just going to read at length, and then we'll do some math, and we will all see very clearly, mathematically, irrefutably, that Darwinism doesn't work. When theorists think of algorithms, they often have in mind kinds of algorithms with properties that are not shared by the algorithms that will concern us. When mathematicians think about algorithms, for instance, they usually have in mind algorithms that can be proven to compute particular mathematical functions of interest to them. Long division is a homely example. A procedure for breaking down a huge number into its prime factors is one that attracts attention in the exotic world of cryptography. But the algorithms that will concern us have nothing particular to do with the number system or other mathematical objects. They are algorithms for sorting, winnowing, and building things. Because most mathematical discussions of algorithms focus on their guaranteed or mathematically provable powers, people sometimes make the elementary mistake of thinking that a process that makes use of chance or randomness is not an algorithm. But even long division makes good use of randomness. So he's using the example here of 47 into 326,574. And so you would have to guess, what's your first guess? Does that go in, 7 times and et cetera? You just do long division. You can make a guess. It'll tell you if you're wrong, and then you make another guess. That's his point. Does the divisor go into the dividend 6 or 7 or 8 times? Who knows? Who cares? You don't have to know. You don't have to have any wit or discernment to do long division. The algorithm directs you to choose a digit at random, if you like, and check out the result. If the chosen number turns out to be too small, increase it by 1 and start over. If too large, decrease it. The good thing about long division is that it always works, eventually. Even if you are maximally stupid in making your first choice, in which case it just takes a little longer. Achieving success on hard tasks in spite of utter stupidity is what makes computers seem magical. How could something as mindless as a machine do something as smart as that? Not surprisingly, then, the tactic of finessing ignorance by randomly generating a candidate and then testing it out mechanically is a ubiquitous feature of interesting algorithms. Not only does it interfere with their provable powers, not only does it not interfere with their provable powers as algorithms, it is often the key to their power. We can begin zeroing in on the phylum of evolutionary algorithms by considering everyday algorithms that share important properties with them. Darwin draws our attention to repeated waves of competition and selection. So consider the standard algorithm for organizing an elimination tournament, such as a tennis tournament, which eventually culminates with quarterfinals, semifinals, and then a final, determining the solitary winner. Notice that this procedure meets the 3 conditions. It is the same procedure whether drawn in chalk on a blackboard or updated in a computer file or a weird possibility, not written down anywhere, but simply enforced by building a huge fan of fenced-off tennis courts, each with 2 entrance gates and a single exit gate, leading the winner to the court where the next match is to be played. The losers are shot and buried where they fall. It doesn't take a genius to march the contestants through the drill, filling in the blanks at the end of each match, or identifying and shooting the losers, and it always works. But what exactly does this algorithm do? It takes as input a set of competitors and guarantees to terminate by identifying a single winner. But what is a winner? It all depends on the competition. Suppose the tournament in question is not tennis, but coin tossing. One player tosses and the other calls. The winner advances. The winner of this tournament will be that single player who has won N consecutive coin tosses without a loss, depending on how many rounds it takes to complete the tournament. There is something strange and trivial about this tournament, but what is it? The winner does have a rather remarkable property. How often, and this is the important part here, there is something strange and trivial about this tournament, but what is it? The winner does have a rather remarkable property. How often have you ever met anyone who just won, say, 10 consecutive coin tosses without a loss? Probably never. The odds against there being such a person might seem enormous, and in the normal course of events, they surely are. If some gambler offered you 10-to-1 odds that he could produce someone who, before your very eyes, would proceed to win 10 consecutive coin tosses using a fair coin, you might be inclined to think this a good bet. If so, you had better hope the gambler doesn't have 1,024 accomplices. They don't have to cheat. They play fair and square. For that is all it takes, 2 to the 10 competitors, to form a 10-round tournament. The gambler wouldn't have a clue as the tournament started which person would end up being the exhibit A that would guarantee his winning the wager. But the tournament algorithm is sure to produce such a person in short order. It's a sucker bet with a surefire win for the gambler. All right. So what Dennett has done there is finally put terms on what evolution would look like as a statistical matter, how one could begin to prove or disprove evolution. And so each one of those wins in the coin toss would be a mutation. We have dust on the one hand, we have Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone on the other. And there are specific mutational events that would need to happen in order to do that. And what he's saying is that if you had a big enough, right? He said to get somebody to win 10 coin tosses in a row, you can guarantee that by having 2 to the 10th power entrants, which is 1,024 entrants. And one of those people is guaranteed to win 10 coin tosses in a row. And the way that this would look evolutionarily is that organism then would have accumulated 10 wins, or that organism's ancestors, that organism's line, would have accumulated 10 wins. Each win is a mutational event. If you have enough entrants in the tournament, you can guarantee that somebody's going to have enough mutational events such that you could take dust and you could turn it into Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone. And he cuts it at 10, because why? The average reader is going to say, oh, wow, that's really convincing. I wouldn't assume that somebody could win 10 coin tosses in a row in an entire lifetime. But all it would take is 1,024 entrants, 2 to the 10th power, to guarantee that. But what if we want somebody to have won 20 coin tosses? Siri, what's 2 to the 20th power?
It's 1,048,576.
Okay. What if we want somebody to have won 30 coin tosses? What's 2 to the 30th power?
That would be 1,073,741,824.
What if we want somebody to win 50 coin tosses? What's 2 to the 50th power?
The answer is approximately 1.1258 times 10 to the 15th power.
What is 2 to the 100th power?
It's approximately 1.2676 times 10 to the 30th power.
So when we have the kindest matrix, the kindest formula for the neo-Darwinian mechanism, natural selection acting on random mutation, would be far more complex than this bracketed tournament. This bracketed tournament is a uber simplification of the process, which is kind to the materialist side, beyond kind. But even that doesn't work, because the average cell is at least 1 trillion times more complex than the constituent molecules of which it is made. The number of mutational events that you would have to cobble together to get dust to become Steve Jobs unveiling the iPhone is in itself astronomical. You put it through this process and it becomes a number, there may not be that many atoms in the known universe. This is the power of exponential numbers. This is Dennett's own formula. This is his own example. He is clearly saying that this mirrors evolution nearly perfectly, that evolution is an algorithm, and that given enough input, any output is guaranteed. However, and I can't believe that he did this, right? Just, you stop at 10 coin tosses, right? It sounds plausible. You take it to 100 coin tosses and it's clearly infeasible. You take it to the trillions of coin tosses that you would need to even begin to have cellular life, and there's not enough randomness in the whole universe to guarantee the outcome that you seek. So this is just the humble philosopher just, throwing this out there. But, that is as rock solid a mathematical definition as you're going to get. Neo-Darwinism is at heart a statistical argument. And all of the, reasonable pushback against it has been seeing that it's a statistical failure from the start. And so the example that Dennett himself gives here clearly disproves Darwinism flat out. And the reason that this is so important is because the belief in Darwinism blinds us from the truth that's all around us. And when Darwinism is clearly proven wrong, such as this mathematical formula, mathematical rubric, whatever you want to call it, this mathematical definition clearly does, then we can look at what's right in front of us, right? Darwinism is the one hope that we can explain things through some sort of random material process and do away with God. What makes God interesting is his creative power. Now, when I use his and I use God in that way, I know I turn a lot of people off, but just translating that into the universe. The universe itself is intelligent. The universe itself is intentional and creative, right? But for me, if somebody wants to prove God to themselves, 2 steps. 1, realize that Darwinism never worked. 2, pick up a book of human anatomy and physiology and you work your way through it and ask yourself how. Okay, that is as fine a definition as I can put on it. So thanks again for tuning in and clicking on this episode. And I would love to hear people's thoughts in the comments.